Good morning on this Sunday, April 17th. A happy Easter and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Governor Brian Kemp signs the constitutional carry bill into law. Also, the battle over voting rights in Georgia heads to a federal courtroom, and Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens marks his 100 days in office. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Georgians who want to carry a concealed handgun can do so now without having to obtain a weapons license now that Governor Brian Kemp signed the measure into law. Democrats say this is a dangerous move. Kemp's Republican opponent, David Perdue, says it's about time.
SB 319 makes sure that law-abiding Georgians, including our daughters and your family too, can protect themselves without having to have permission from your state government.
Under the new law, eligible Georgians no longer need to get a weapons carry license and undergo a background check in order to carry a concealed weapon in public. But opponents argue while background checks are required for gun purchases at stores, they're not required for private gun sales.
This legislation would potentially allow individuals with a criminal history who purchased a gun through a private sale to legally carry a hidden loaded weapon in our communities.
Meanwhile, Governor Kemp's opponent in the Republican primary says it took Kemp long enough to get the bill passed.
Look, he was in the United States Senate for 6 years. I don't ever remember him pushing this bill up there.
There's a lot to digest here, and I'd like to go right into the politics of this law because, Phil, this is a big win for the Republican base. But what did you think about David Perdue's comments?
Well, I think it's a win not just for the Republican base with the May 24th primary coming up between Governor Kemp and David Perdue. I think it's a win for most Georgians. I mean, the Second Amendment has the right to keep and bear arms. And you go to some gun range and you can see people of all ages, races, and genders purchasing firearms. Why? There's a crime wave going on in this state. And nationwide for that matter. And so this is for people to be armed, and you have to get background checks. Let's be clear here when you buy from a gun store or a gun show. And so people are going to use guns illegally anyway if they're in gangs or anything like this. This is to help the law-abiding citizen.
Darren, you know, Democrats called this bill signing shameful, and they pointed out the governor signed the same day as a mass shooting happened in New York City. Yeah. Will this be a big issue for Stacey Abrams to use on the campaign trail?
I think it's going to be a big issue in the Republican primary, and it's definitely going to be a big issue in the general election. You know, Lori, I'm all for the Second Amendment, and I'm all for people who choose to be responsible gun owners, right? But I think what this does is that it takes away an extra layer that's been in place. And that extra layer is that, yes, if you go to a gun shop to buy a gun, they do a background check. But if you want to have an open carry permit, you have to go to your local municipality to get that permit. So that's that extra layer, that's that additional check. And so now you're eliminating that additional layer, which I think we also know that criminals buy guns from private citizens. That is something that happens often.
Or steal guns.
Or steal guns. And we've heard now soon to be outgoing Chief Rodney Bryant talk about that when we see the direct correlation in the reasons why cars are being broken into is because people are actually breaking in to steal guns. And so I just think that this is just the timing of it, and was it really necessary is a question that deserves to be raised.
But Republicans will say those criminals aren't going to go and get a background check anyway. They're going to just put them in their pockets and be gone.
But the
Look,
goal
the sky is falling. There's no evidence. If you look at the evidence overall, you go back to the seminal study on this, More Guns, Less Crime by John Lott. The studies are there that when people are legitimately carrying to protect themselves, those are not the people breaking the law. Those are not the people out there committing crimes. If you look at the number of people that buy a gun legally, they're like 0.00023% of the crimes. The problem is some of the things Theron's talking about as far as stealing guns and people buying private guns. Now, I don't know what percentage that is. I think all of us anecdotally know some of these stories about people buying guns or hearing about stolen guns, but there is no evidence to show that a bill like this, when it has been instituted in other states, that it has increased crime.
Melita.
Well, I think the interesting part about all of this is the way that Perdue dissed the State Patrol in his press conference. Who in their right mind disses the group that's going to be assigned to protect him if he's elected?
Well, let me respond to that, and I think it's been misinterpreted deliberately by media sources like the AJC. I'm an Army veteran, but I can criticize the U.S. Army if I see things wrong. I mean, what's wrong with criticizing the State Patrol? The recruitment is down. Governor Kemp is in charge. I think he should have used it far more during this crime wave we all been discussing. When I go to the Capitol there, and you go down there, I see public urination on the streets. I see aggressive panhandling. The troopers don't do anything. You laugh at it, but it's certainly not the quality of life that most Georgians would want.
Well, Phil just hit a point that because I wanted to make sure that I didn't monopolize the time. It's also another question of how you're going to basically how you're going to enforce this new law. Because literally, if someone gets into an altercation, and we know many of these altercations now are no longer ending in fist fights. They're ending in people shooting each other. And so now you add this thing where, like, basically the person can say, hey, I don't have to have a permit, and I got this gun. And then there's this whole problem, like, you know, defining how the person got the gun and could be stolen. And so I think also you're putting an extra layer on our public safety law enforcement individuals that got to enforce this new law. And it's going to be an argument. Okay. It's going to be a debate about that.
Okay, I want to move on from this because I want to go back to Perdue's comments because I'm glad because, I mean, he's just not that eloquent on the campaign trail. I mean, if you say something like that and then you have to go and explain, well, what I really meant was, it's not effective.
He said he wanted to be a more elite force.
Well, look, as far as
but isn't that a backhanded slap in the face to law enforcement?
No, I think we all. I'm in favor of law enforcement. I think we all are. But I mean, we need to do better. We certainly can do better.
Look, and as far as the State Patrol goes, I think it was inartful the way he said it, and I do think that there are some rumblings within the State Patrol, like all other law enforcement agencies, I think, across the country, because they're all shorthanded right now. And that can be laid at the feet of the defund the police discussion that happened in the summer of 2020. That's when we started seeing things going down as far as people leaving, retiring early, that kind of thing. It's been great for us in Hall County because we've got a whole bunch of Atlanta police officers that have come to work for us now, and they really know what they're doing. But I think as far as the State Patrol comments are concerned, I did not understand, in fairness, that being brought into the discussion of the constitutional carry. However, I do think that everybody has to look at how you can make the State Patrol and other law enforcement agencies better and up to speed.
Melita.
The capacity of law enforcement agencies, both with their numbers and the tools they're given to do their job, falls straight to the hands of the elected legislators and county and city officials who set those budgets. It has nothing to do with the kinds of protests we've seen in the past.
All right, let me talk about this. An interesting poll from the University of Georgia this week. We're all trying to kind of figure out the Trump effect when it comes to candidates. The poll shows the former president's endorsement really matters down ticket, not as much at the top of the ticket. Phil, your thoughts on that?
I thought that was interesting, and when you go back and look at other polling and other races over the years, I think name ID has a lot to do with this. And so I think Governor Kemp, as we've talked about the last couple shows, has gotten some great publicity, free earned media, because of the bills he's signing and things like that. I think, though, people really aren't focusing on down ticket. There's going to be a lower turnout on down ticket, so that, as we've talked about, Trump is beloved outside Metro Atlanta and the Republican base. And so I noticed that, especially when you look at Burt Jones's number, the candidate for lieutenant governor, he has picked up tremendously, and his strategy was to, hey, I'm endorsed by Trump. The others are doing that too. I was even surprised a little bit that perhaps, I don't know how accurate the numbers are, that Vernon Jones is picking up some strength down ticket in his congressional race.
One quick point. Trey Hood at UGA, who did this, it's more of an experiment where he separated out groups, asked with the Trump effect, without the Trump effect. That's why this is so interesting.
It is very interesting. Can I get one more comment in here? Okay, thank you to the producer. Darren, I want to talk about this federal court ruling that prevents Stacey Abrams from using a leadership committee law to raise as much money as she can until she's officially the Democratic nominee after May 24th.
Look, I think when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, it was about basically sort of evening and leveling the playing field. Now, Martha, sort of pushed back and say, well, she's not the nominee. I think the lawsuit did kind of put some things in there about how, the party has already said that she's a nominee. She's the only one anyone running for governor as a Democrat. But clearly the law was, the court didn't decide with her. But I think what it did, Lori, is that it was the right thing to do. Look, you want to figure out how can you raise money. She's running against an incumbent governor who's going to have a lot of money, and what this would have done is allow her to raise money in a sort of a different way.
All right, I got to leave it there.
Judge Mark Cohen said the law was clear.
I got to leave it there, guys. Coming up, the high-profile voting rights case heads to federal trial. We'll discuss after the break.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
After Stacey Abrams ran for governor in 2018, she vowed to sue over the way the state's elections were managed. As she makes another run for governor, that lawsuit is being heard in federal court. Melita, over to you. The suit alleges that state officials grossly mismanaged the election, depriving some citizens, especially low-income folks and people of color, of their right to vote. Why do you think they have a case here?
Well, I think there are a number of witnesses who will be called who will make that case eloquently. But what we have to focus on is now getting out the vote for the current cycle, learning the lessons from all the testimony gathered 4 years ago, and getting the votes out for this trial. So it's almost like this trial is too little too late.
Phil, this is a bench trial, so it's a little bit different. It's not a jury that will decide this, so it'll be the judge.
That's right, and I'm remembering, of course, back to 2018 when Stacey Abrams said the election was stolen and there was mismanagement and fraud. Gee, that's kind of what President Trump was saying in 2020, wasn't it? I think it's so ironic. Anyhow, the point of this is the exact match of votes and ballots, and I think that why not have an exact match when you're matching registration and documents? So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the court.
She won't be successful in this endeavor either because the data does not back up that people were suppressed in their vote.
But real quick, I think you got to talk about, and it's funny, you know, I made that point because what really happened in 2020, Lori, is that when Stacey Abrams lost the 2018 race, she pointed out some of the roadblocks. She pointed out some of the irregularities that basically were targeted at black and brown voters. And in 2020, we just basically beat the Republicans at their own game. We beat them by their own rules. And that's why Trump and all of them basically put out this false claim. But I do think the trial, I agree with Melita, I think it's going to point out some things, even if it's unsuccessful, which I think it should be successful, but even if it's unsuccessful, I think it puts everyone on notice that some of the things that did happen in 2018 cannot happen in 2022.
So you don't like the exact match?
No, what I'm just saying to you is that you just totally dismissed it. No, but I think that there were some roadblocks. There were some irregularities. People forget we had problems with our voting machines, right? And so this is what this lawsuit and this conversation is all going to sort of bring out. And I think that it's got to fix the way we do elections in Georgia.
Okay, I want to move on because this is a really important topic and I want to leave a lot of time for us. Let's talk about Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, who marked his first 100 days in office this week. Phil, you said you would give him time. In your opinion, how's he doing? Because I want to applaud the fact that he's being transparent, he's doing media interviews, and he's not only communicating his thoughts, but also his plans.
Well, those are some good points. So I'll give him a C+ on the 100 days because I did want a new police chief. We did have an announcement that Chief Rodney Bryan is retiring. I'm glad to hear that there'll be a national search. So I think let's try to get the best with the crime wave going on. I do think we've taken some baby steps. I like what he's saying. I do think that he's not going to destroy single-family zoning like former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is doing. I do disagree and don't like the fact, I don't think a lot of Atlantans do, that he's kept a lot of Bottoms' people, including the chief counsel. I don't understand that. He's got to work on airport and procurement, and it's still a mess, and it's still a pit of corruption. I'm going to say that because we've got a record. I wish he would address more the contracting and procurement.
Well, I think he said that. I don't know if I'd call it corruption right now.
What is he doing?
100 days. Procurement's a messy, complicated
I'll give him another
system.
100.
Okay, all right. Melita.
Well, I think every politician wants to have their constituents feel seen, heard, and felt. And Andre Dickens has excelled at all of those things. He himself has been seen. He's been out and about, very public, hugging necks, filling potholes, He's, in one instance, when a policeman was shot, he was at Grady Hospital to check on the policeman, to check on the family. Before he left the hospital, every policeman on duty that day knew that their mayor had checked on their fallen comrade. And so I think we need to give him credit for doing those small things. He helped the airport employees who clean the bathrooms get a pay raise. They were only making $8 an hour for cleaning up the mess after the rest of us, and he's helped them get a pay raise. And so I think he's really demonstrated a great grasp of what it takes to lead and be an empathetic, compassionate leader.
Martha, I think she has several good points. I mean, he's doing what we expect of a mayor.
Well, I think compared to the no-show of the last year and a half of the Atlanta mayor, which was basically she was hard to find, we couldn't get her in there. I'm not blaming her, but that's was the truth. He is doing all those things correctly, and you know what? I'll be like Phil. I'll give him another 100 days.
Aaron, you talked to him quite a bit.
I do, and I'm very proud of Mayor Dickens because I think Melita made a lot of good things, but just a couple more. I mean, and Phil and I talked about this too. I mean, this week he announced that he took 24 felons, people who basically are fugitives, off the streets in a sort of a week period. And so when you talk about public safety, he's also basically put forth a first repeat offenders unit. Basically, is going to keep a lot of our repeat offenders off the street. He's also committed to 20,000 new and sort of preserving affordable housing units. And so I think what you see is the energy. He's out and about. He's talking to everyone. He's being inclusive. And I think the other thing is though he's working with council. We can't, we got to look at where we've been with some new mayors. And I think him being a former council member, working with them to do. And then I think as far as Phil's point about want to come in and fire everyone, he has made some changes. I think he will make additional changes. And Chief Bryan decided that he's going to retire, and now they're going to do a national search. They're going to bring in a new chief, and so I think the morale is up with the APD, and we got to make sure that we can keep the attrition under control. But ultimately, I think that he has A, and the grade I would give him his first 100 days.
A and a C+, and I'm going to leave it there.
A for the A. Great for the A.
All right. Coming up, Georgia joins a lawsuit over President Biden's immigration plans. Phil cannot wait to talk about this one. Straight ahead.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
It's known as Title 42, a policy President Trump used to turn away people at the border on the grounds of public health during the pandemic. The Biden administration plans to end the emergency health order next month. Georgia is one of several states that has joined a lawsuit against the federal government over this issue. Phil, I'll turn to you first.
Well, hallelujah. This is a wonderful lawsuit. Attorney General Chris Carr has joined with a lot of other state attorney generals. And I think what people need to know is in Georgia, we have more illegal aliens in this state than a border state like Arizona, according to the Homeland Security website. This is why even some Democrats, and to his credit, after breaking silence, Raphael Warnock has come out in favor of keeping the Trump policy in the name of public health. We don't know who these people are. They're human drug traffickers. They're arms traffickers. They could be people carrying communicable diseases. And so we cannot have them flooding into Georgia and all of the states.
Melita, Phil mentioned Senator Warnock, but there are some Democrats also that say the Biden administration really needs to have a plan for border communities expected to deal with an influx of people coming over the border.
Well, I think this issue might deserve a lot more discussion, but I also think that Chris Carr has this habit of just being in lockstep with the remaining Republican attorneys general, and he's only at 31% in the polls, and so Chris Carr is doing anything he can to get publicity and press. The bigger problem at the border right now is Texas Governor Greg Abbott having those safety checks that have backed all the trucks trying to bring things like fresh produce into this country up for miles and miles and miles, and creating supply chain issues.
All right, well, this week, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger announced he asked law enforcement to investigate why possible non-citizens tried to register to vote. Martha, Raffensperger says his office found more than 1,600 people who fall into this category.
Well, and I think this is an example of that it takes time to do these investigations. By nature, our election process is messy and there's problems involved in it. I mean, I support that Raffensperger's looking into this. I'd like to find a way to have it more streamlined and have it be more relevant to the actual election cycle.
Theron, Raffensperger claims that third-party groups like Fair Fight, well, they're trying to encourage non-citizens to vote.
Well, we have some third-party Republican groups here as well. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think they're encouraging non-citizens to vote.
No. But my point is that, you know, these third-party groups, they go out and encourage everyone to register to vote. And so some of these non-citizens register to vote, not sort of maybe fully understanding that they can't vote. I mean, there's a pretty extensive background check because you have to be a citizen in order to vote. But I think the one thing we also pointed out, Lori, and you brought this subject up a few months ago, is that Raffensperger also did another investigation. It showed that we had very, very, very minimal non-citizen voting in our election. And so he didn't get what he wanted in the audit as far as them voting. So now he's going to the registration. And so I think for our viewers is to say, hey, the fact that, yeah, he did catch, I think 31 of them were in Chatham County. I mean, I think that was interesting. But 1,600 in a big state of 11 million people it's a small number, but ultimately, I think we got to point out that a lot of these non-citizens are not voting. It's not a big problem in our election.
And Phil and then Melita.
It's always a big problem because, especially when you had 1.2 million of these absentee ballots back in the 2020 election, with 5 and 6 ballots coming to a home, you're bound to have non-citizens, and this is why Raffensperger is low in the poll. I don't even know why he's running for re-election for Secretary of State. He's mismanaged so much stuff, but the audits were wrong. He audits Cobb County, and yet he doesn't audit Fulton County, where everybody knows the problems are. Even Stacey Abrams knows where the problems are in Fulton County.
Melita.
For your information, Raffensperger's at 18% in the polls.
That's terrible.
None of those 1,600 non-citizens cast a ballot.
Right.
So rather than make it seem that this was a lot of fraud, they didn't get to vote.
Is that the underlying issue? I mean, the system worked?
I think all in all, I'm one of the people that think all in all the system worked. My problem for the last 15 years has been absentee ballots. I've been sounding the alarm on absentee ballots for 15 years. And that there was that someday, and this is where my exact terminology I use on the air, there's a loophole that Stacey Abrams was going to figure out how to drive a Mack truck through, okay? And I have been sounding that alarm for 15 years and at least 10 years since Stacey Abrams has been at the top of the ticket and talking about that. That's where the issues are. That's the issues that were fixed with 202.
I got to wrap, but go ahead there.
Yeah, but so Martha, and I can't call you my favorite Republican anymore. I get in trouble when I do that. But you're going right into the heart of the issue here, right? It's because what Democrats did in this state, and I've said this over and over again, we learned how to beat the Republicans at their own rules, right? And so, but we shouldn't be sort of criminalized and criticized for that. But I think that Melita just pointed out these audits, particularly with Raffensperger, is trying to basically attempt to claim that there was this fraud that was done by Democrats, and attacking non-citizens is basically a reason for him to try to get his base of support, and it's just not working for him.
Very briefly, would a Democrat Secretary of State even bother to investigate if non-citizens are voting? No.
But you know what y'all didn't do?
All right, I gotta leave it there, guys.
Y'all didn't compliment Raffensperger when he did something that no other Secretary of State did, is that he basically made the purge list available for, and he sent out voter registration applications
Y'all
to
keep
every
going. We will
active
not
voters.
have winners and losers, so I gotta leave it there. We'll be right back with winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, I want to first congratulate our own Martha Zoller, because I want to get this right. You've been named to the Heavy 100 Top 100 Talk Shows in America by Talkers Magazine.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
And take it away.
Yeah, so Elon Musk is my winner this week. I used Theron's Get the Popcorn in talking about that. I pulled the popcorn out, and I can't wait to watch this takeover of Twitter if it happens. So he's my winner this week. David Schaefer, I've been very hard on him, but he did give a great message of unity last night to a Republican event, and so I'm making him a winner for that. And losers are Democrat candidates. I invite them on my show all the time. They don't even get back to you. So guys, you need to come on if you want to grow.
You'll be nice, right?
I'll be nice.
Yes, Theron.
Well, my first winner is going to be our Atlanta Hawks. As we tape, they're going to be going against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm making a bold prediction they'll beat Cleveland and make it to the playoffs. And also, I want to give a shout out to Councilman Park Brian Park in the city of Brookhaven. I was at the game and I saw him win the dance cam video. And Councilman, I didn't know you could move like that, but definitely want to make him a winner for his dance moves.
Nice. Phil.
Well, my winner winner is Michael Hightower, and he had a recent South Metro development conference, and it brings together all these experts on how we can do better in job development and economic growth. And so, talking to the sports world, Theron, we got to have the Masters winner there, Scotty Scheffler, and he gave all glory to God, which I think was a very nice right as we celebrate Easter.
Absolutely. Melita.
Well, my first winner is those plucky students at North Druid Hills High School whose viral video is making the school board consider renovations to their high school.
8 minutes worth of just disgusting stuff at that high school. So I'm
That's
glad
right.
they
But
pointed that out. There's some student journalism at work there.
Good students, yes. Then the Sandy Springs Police Department is partnering with a local auto parts store to give gift certificates for things like broken taillights instead of citations. And my final winner of the week would be Mike Lukovich. He is just on fire with his cartoons lately. His Friday cartoon of Herschel Walker carrying a lot of baggage down a football field is priceless.
All right, I can't believe it. We got time. Go ahead.
Well, real quick, I called my good friend Brian Park. It's John Park, so I know who you are, Councilman. One more winner is Faith Mashidi, a black 14-year-old violinist of Central Gwinnett High School, was offered admissions to the Braveheart Music Centers in 2022 high school orchestra.
Congratulations to her. All right, everybody. Thank you. Happy Easter.
Happy
Easter.
Easter.
Happy Easter.
He is risen.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We will see you again next week. Everybody have a wonderful Easter. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.